A Fulbright scholar, Robin Sukhadia studies tabla, which are classical North Indian drums, under Pandit Swapna Chowdhury at the Aliapur College of Music in San Rafael in California, and at the California Institute of the Arts, where he earned an MFA in world music. You can find out more about Robin at tablapusher.com. Robin also has a short coming up later on in the shorts program. How many of you hear the shorts as well? Okay, quite a few of you. So you also get to see his work as a filmmaker. I hope a lot of you have seen Lagaan. How many of you have seen Lagaan? All of us almost. And RRR. Okay. So yeah, enjoy the lecture, and thank you, Robin, for this wonderful treat of a talk.
Thank you. So awesome. What is up, Third Eye? Thank you all for coming here today on a sunny 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon in San Francisco. It is such a privilege for me to be here. You have no idea. I want to just, first of all, give a shout out to Yvonne, Rena, Angela, Suji, all these amazing people putting on this festival. Please, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. And for me, my very first date with my now wife, Nilanjana Banerjee, was at the Third Eye Film Festival 20 years ago. So for all y'all lovebirds out there, be careful. Now, I cannot wait to spend the next 6 hours with you guys here in this theater. We're going to be watching Lagaan. You guys didn't hear about the duration of this program? No worries. You don't have to call a babysitter just yet. So, where does my love for Bollywood come from? Why are you doing this, Robin? I've been asked that question so many times. So, for me, it was my parents who introduced me to the vibrant world of Indian cinema through the record collections. That's my dad who ignited this passion for Bollywood in me. And growing up in Toronto, Canada, and then later in Ohio, it was impossible to see Bollywood films on the big screen. VHS certainly helped get the films to us, but it was the music that captivated my heart. And that's what got me into all this. The rich instrumentation, the wild arrangements, all that energy. I would feel it through the music when I was sitting in my father's lap. And we would listen to Silsila, Kurbani, Kabhi Kabhi, and my mom would be humming songs from Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And these are all vinyl records, by the way. That's what got me into this. And through that music, I was transported into a magical world, a magical cinematic world. So Mother India. For over a century, Indian films have not only entertained us, but have also played a crucial role in articulating ideas of national identity, resistance, and freedom. Cinema has mirrored the social political landscape of India, particularly during its struggle for independence and the subsequent years of nation building. Many films have portrayed the ideas of nonviolence based on Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy that was pivotal to India's freedom struggle. Even fewer films have depicted the more radical, revolutionary aspects of the fight against colonial power, showcasing the sacrifices made by those who believe in armed resistance. As we will be discussing, that is all changing. Together, these narratives have contributed to a complex understanding of what it means to be Indian. Context is so important to anything, especially film. What came before, what's happening during, and what is to come. And before we even look at the two films that we'll be discussing here today, we're going to look at Mother India, which came out in 1957. Let's watch a little bit of this clip. Directed by Mehboob Khan and starring Nargis and Sunil Dutt, Mother India is the story of a poverty-stricken village woman named Radha, who is struggling in the absence of her husband to raise her children. The film metaphorically represents India as a nation in the aftermath of independence in 1947 and alludes to a strong sense of Indian nationalism and nation building. Allusions to Hindu mythology are all over the film, and its lead character has been seen as a representation of an ideal Indian woman who reflects high moral standards and sacrifices herself in the birth of a new nation. We see the loss of the village and the values in the face of modern capitalism and technology, while some of the critics treat Radha as a symbol of women's empowerment, others see her as casting female stereotypes. The film was one of the most expensive Indian productions and earned the highest revenue of any Indian film up to that time. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best International Film, becoming the very first Indian film to be nominated. And it portrays communist ideals, the value of collective action over the individual. And you see that in this clip. And by the way, you saw that the music is by Noshad, and that's for another lecture, but what an incredible composer. This, as we'll soon understand, this narrative is vastly different from Lagaan and RRR. Within decades, Bollywood and Indian cinema as a whole trades the reverence for the divine feminine for overtly masculine roles in Lagaan and RRR. So that was the past, and what about the present? Well, we're talking about Indian cinema, and I want to clarify that India as a national construct didn't really exist until 1947 when it earned its independence from the British, and the British reigned over India for nearly 200 years. We cannot understand Indian cinema without acknowledging the country's connection to empire and colonialism. And it's no coincidence that the two films that we're looking at here today portray fictional and glorified stories of South Asians overcoming their colonial oppressors. What you see here on the screen are two paintings that you just saw that are created by the British. And they portray them as being benevolent rulers, peacefully transitioning power over to the Indians, and we know that that's not the case. So, Lagaan, released in 2001, which you all saw last year at the festival, takes us back to the late 19th century, a time when the British Empire had firmly established its control over India. The period was marked by widespread economic exploitation, oppressive taxes, and a deepening sense of injustice amongst Indian populations. However, it was also a time when the seeds of injustice seeds of Indian nationalism were being sown, particularly through the influence of leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, who later emerged as a central figure in Indian independence. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence resistance, or satyagraha, advocated for civil disobedience and peaceful protest as a means to challenge British authority. This approach emphasized moral strength, unity, and the power of the collective action without resorting to violence. On the other hand, RRR, which was released in 2022, transports us to the early 20th century, a period when the nationalist movement had become more fragmented and divisive in its approaches. While Gandhi's principles continued to inspire many, there were also a growing sentiment amongst many sections of society that more radical action was going to be necessary to overthrow the British. This led to the rise of revolutionary nationalism, characterized by armed struggle and violent rebellion. Figures like Bhagat Singh, Subhash Chandra Bose, and the real inspiration behind RRR's protagonists, Alluri Sitaram Raju and Komaram Bhim, embodied this approach, believing that independence could only be achieved through direct and violent confrontation with the colonial power. So, what is Bollywood? Well, Bollywood is a term that attempts to define from a Western perspective the immensely diverse and rich industry of Indian cinema as a whole. Bollywood refers to Bombay, the financial juggernaut of India. While there was no national construct, as I mentioned before 1947, there was Bollywood. There was the entire South Asian subcontinent where filmmaking was alive in various places prior to Bombay. And we call this Indian cinema. And it's so much bigger than Bollywood. There are different regional forms of cinema across the subcontinent, and each of them are beautiful reflections of the immense diversity of the country and the subcontinent as a whole. So you have Tollywood, which is referring either to Bengali cinema based in Kolkata, or Telugu's language films originating in Hyderabad, of which RRR is one. You also have Hollywood, which is the Kodambakkam region of Chennai. You have Mollywood, which is Malayalam cinema. You even have Lollywood, which is not in India, of course that's Lahore in Pakistan. But all of these cultures together form what we call Indian cinema, or South Asian cinema. Now, how did India, and how did cinema in India become the major other industry outside of Hollywood? Well, the Lumiere brothers unveiled their revolutionary motion picture capture device in Paris, France in 1895. Now guess where these dudes went next on their tour of trying to sell this contraption? Well, in 6 months they arrived in Bombay on July 7, 1896 at the Watson Hotel. This is an actual image of the flyer of when they unveiled this device. And when India did achieve independence from the British, it was film and cinema that became the crucible for nation building and decolonization. And soon it became one of India's major international exports. So Bollywood, it's fantasy, it's escapism, it's epic, it's about melodrama, and some of the requirements of a Bollywood film, well, there usually are no tragic endings. It's repetitive, it's predictable, it's formulaic. You've got your 6 songs or 2 big lavish songs, your high melodrama, suspension of reality. Typically they are in Hindi or Urdu, which is understood by 400 million South Asians. Glamorous stars, rhythmic music, extravagant sets, locations and costumes. It's a masala, right? It's a mix of all kinds of different things. And as I mentioned earlier, these are 3+ hours long each. More on that later. Bollywood is a reflection of contemporary times. As a world-building cultural export and influencer of internal and external values, Bollywood is an important barometer of what is important to a country that continues to ascend into superpower status. Now, it wouldn't be a lecture without some charts and data and stats, and I do love my charts. So, Indian cinema, which includes Bollywood, releases between 1,500 to 2,000 films annually, compared to less than 500 films in Hollywood. Indians buy 2.7 billion movie theater tickets annually, the most in the world, and Bollywood sold 3.3 billion tickets worldwide in 2022, compared to Hollywood's 850 million. Tickets for a Bollywood movie are comparably cheaper, about 50 cents, compared to your $11 to see a Hollywood film. The revenue, this is important. Bollywood's revenue is expected to achieve around 3.7 billion this year. Compare that to 34 billion for Hollywood films. There are approximately 10,000 screens across India to screen movies, compared to 40,000 or more here in the US. Approximately 14 million Indians go to the cinema daily. The average film costs 1.5 million to produce in Bollywood, compared to 65 million in Hollywood's. RRR, which we'll get to in a moment, was considered one of the most expensive ever produced at 60 million, still lower than the average of a Hollywood picture. But Bollywood and Indian cinema increasingly cater to the 60% of Indians who are under the age of 30. This is a massive global appeal, especially in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Russia. It is truly the other Hollywood. So with this context, past and present, we now shift our focus to 2 films that stand out as significant examples of how Indian nationalism has been portrayed in cinema. Lagaan in 2001 and RRR 21 years later in 2022. These films present starkly different visions of the Indian struggle for independence. After a decade dominated by romance, materialism, and Shah Rukh Khan, Lagaan brought to life one of India's greatest passions, cricket. Lagaan, which translates to tax, was released in 2001. It was directed by Ashutosh Gowariker, and it stars Amir Khan. And Lagaan was nominated for the Best International Feature in 2002 at the Academy Awards. And the film's narrative is steeped in the ethos of nonviolence. It tells the story of a small village that, instead of taking up arms, challenges the British Raj to a cricket match. A match that becomes a metaphor for peaceful resistance and unity against oppression. The film is set in 1893 and revolves around the drought-stricken village of Champaner, who are oppressed. The villagers are oppressed by high taxes imposed by the British. And when these villagers try to persuade the British to reduce their taxes, the commanding British officer challenges them to a game of cricket. And in exchange for winning, the taxes will be waived for 3 years. Now, if they lose, they will have to pay 3 times the tax. Now, how did this film about taxes, cricket, and drought become such an international sensation? Well, it's obvious. It's the music, right? It's A.R. I'm just joking. There's so many factors, but that is still a major factor, in my opinion. And now what we're going to watch is Ganana Ganana. This is one of the most awesome songs. Okay, let's just check this out. Yeah. So, Ganana Ganana carries deep symbolic resonance, linking it to the theme of Indian nationalism. Masterfully composed by A.R. Rahman, with lyrics by Javed Akhtar, we see that the village, much like all of South Asia during the freedom struggle, is waiting for liberation. the collective's yearning for rain, which symbolized the villagers' collective desire for self-governance and autonomy from British rule. The farmers, workers, the elders, the children, they all look up to the sky and sing in unison. They represent the unity of diverse groups in India coming together to fight for a common cause. Just as the villagers sing for rain, freedom fighters in India aspired for political freedom. The elusive rain clouds symbolize the British rule, hovering yet never providing relief in the form of rain or freedom. The cultural and traditional elements of the song, its lyrics, the cinematography, the choreography, the music, serve as a form of resistance to colonial repression. The villagers' act of singing traditional Indian music and folk songs is an assertion of their cultural identity, distinct from colonial influences. Beyond the nationalism symbolizing the song, there is the representation of the system of the village itself. There's the hierarchy that mirrors the nation and even the Bollywood industrial complex. At the very apex, you have a very attractive North Indian man, Amir Khan, who is essentially a god. He has the foresight to understand cricket, unlike anyone else in the village. He stands in for Krishna. He is like Krishna. He's pursued by his lover Gauri, not the other way around. He possesses the agency to express love polyamorously with both Gauri and the white British Madame, Elizabeth Russell. God forbid. He is going to disperse justice, and he's kind, he's non-violent. Then comes the rest of the society, the women, who ultimately can't play cricket, and his mom, then the Sikh, then finally the Dalit. What complicates this hierarchy, especially when nationalism is viewed from the present-day politics in India, is that Amir Khan is a Muslim star. His character is a North Indian Hindu male. We like Bhuvan, but boy, we like Amir Khan. For all his problems, Bollywood, thankfully, is still a space where some aspects of secular acceptance and love can still be expressed, no matter how fantastically impossible it would be to achieve this reality. Now, we talk about the great A.R. Rahman, who was born Dilip Kumar in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, the son of R.K. Shaper, the renowned Malayalam composer. According to my research, R.K. Shaper was the first South Asian composer to own a Japanese synthesizer and to use it in his compositions. Rahman converted to Sufism, changed his name to Allah Rahman, and continued to carve a unique musical path from his base in Chennai, positioning him as an outsider to the Mumbai film industry. At just 9 years old, his father passed away, and he became the primary breadwinner for his family and his 3 sisters. Inheriting his father's clients and equipment, he took on numerous projects, composing over 300 advertising jingles in just 5 years, while working tirelessly to support his family. Rahman credits Sufism for healing his family, and its spiritual mysticism is evident across all of his compositions. His breakthrough came in 1992 with Roja, a collaboration with filmmaker Mani Ratnam, which was named one of the most influential albums of all time by Time magazine. The success of Roja led to further collaboration with Mani Ratnam on politically charged films like Bombay and Dilse, establishing Rahman as a transformational force in Indian cinematic music. With over 200 million copies sold of his 100-plus albums worldwide, Rahman is considered one of among the world's top selling artists. Time magazine named him the Mozart of Madras and included him in 2009 in their list of the world's most influential people. A master of Carnatic, Hindustani, Western classical, Qawwali, and electronic music, Rahman considers the synthesizer, quote, the ideal combination of music and technology. He's a lifelong fan of Artie Burman, and Rahman founded Bachatan Record in 1992, which became India's most advanced recording studio, and later established the KM Music Conservatory in 2008 to nurture future generations of musicians. And this is him with his mom, and him with Oprah. Gotta love it. He's a John Legend. And then him accepting the Academy Award. Now, let's watch Oda Choi. And let's notice the way our A.R. Rahman combines folk traditional music with Western classical strings in this sequence. Gotta love that. not only for Rahman's gorgeous arrangement and production, but also because it reflects Indian nationalism through its portrayal of cultural identity and resistance. The song alternates between Bhuvan's Hindi verses and Elizabeth's English lyrics, highlighting the contrast between Indian and British perspectives. The duality not only mirrors the colonial encounter, but asserts Indian pride and resilience. The love expressed in the song serves as a metaphor for India's quest for equality and mutual recognition. Elizabeth's admiration for Bhuvan's world reflects how Indian nationalism sought respect rather than domination. Her support of the Indian cause shows that understanding and empathy can transcend cultural divides. Bhuvan's depiction amongst lush fields and traditional settings accompanied by flute interludes and spiritual overtones symbolizes the richness of Indian culture. The song subtly critiques colonial narratives that undermine this richness, emphasizing India's cultural and spiritual depth. It's all quite lovey-dovey. And a reflection of where India was in June of 2001, when the film was released, just 3 months before 9/11, when India became a key ally in the global anti-terrorist effort. This film came on the heels of two other very critical political moments. India had just detonated a nuclear bomb in 1998, enabling it to assert itself more on the global stage and basically becoming a superpower. India was still navigating tensions with Pakistan after the 1999 Kargil conflict, which fueled nationalistic pride. The BJP-led government at the time, under Vajpayee, was promoting Hindu nationalist ideals, paralleling the film's themes of resistance based on Hindu values against colonialism. And then, within just about 7 or 8 months, and then on February 27, 2002, the Sabarmati Express, a train carrying Hindu pilgrims returning from the site of the demolished Babri Masjid, was attacked. 59 people lost their lives in a fire that broke out on the train just out of the station of Godhra, leading to mass sectarian riots across Gujarat. So ultimately, this song is about an impossible fantasy. Bhuvan cannot live and manifest a deep relationship with Elizabeth, nor her with him, inside this colonial construct. Now we jump 21 years into the future. And we can, with this understanding that I just shared with you, see the contrast that RRR presents to us. When we consider Mother India and Lagaan, RRR, directed by S.S. Rajamouli, is a fictionalized retelling of the lives of two real-life revolutionary freedom fighters. This film glorifies acts of rebellion and violence as necessary tools in the fight against the colonial power, presenting a very different approach to the idea of nation. RRR, which stands for Rise, Roar, and Revolt, has taken the world by storm. It's one of the most expensive Indian films ever made, and one of the most successful, becoming the fourth highest grossing Indian film of all time. Even Netflix, which has been streaming the film ever since last year, declared it as the most watched Indian film on its service, viewed over 50 million times globally. The film's release date was pushed 3 times due to COVID and represents a new unity between Bollywood and the Telugu film industries. RRR's infectious song Naatu outshined Lady Gaga and Rihanna and won an Oscar for the Best Original Song in 2023. And RRR, surprisingly, is the very first Indian film truly made from India by Indians to actually win an Academy Award. The acting, the special effects, the production, exquisite. The film is full of big emotions, enthralling action set pieces, sweeping gestures, and a memorably epic soundtrack composed by M.M. Kirwani. It's a high-octane roller coaster of a film, loosely portraying Indian nationalism and colonial history very differently from Lagaan. Gone is the slow, simplistic pace, a narrative focused on nonviolence of a colonial oppressor. In RRR, it's violent action, and that's the only way to assert authority against the British. And from the very beginning of the film, we are shown that there is no single narrative for nationalism. Here, we have 2 characters coming from entirely different communities. First, we have Komaram Beam, played by N.T. Rama Rao Jr., who is a tribal leader for the Gond community. He is embarking on a mission to rescue his sister, a young village or Adivasi girl named Mali who's been kidnapped by the British authorities. Being is portrayed as a symbol of indigenous wisdom, strength, and resistance. He embodies the natural spirit of rebellion against oppression. That is a damn impressive clip, I guess. I'm glad you're having this reaction. I certainly had the same. As in Lagaan, we see the primal connection to life in communion and reverence to nature, contrasting with the British colonial approach of extraction and exploitation. Gone is the soft masculinity of Amir Khan and the maternal pride of Mother India. Through the visuals, the pacing, the choreography, we now see the celebration of Indian identity, pride, power, and resilience, with an emphasis on masculinity and heroism. The protagonist fights colonial oppression and symbolizes the reclamation of Indian strength and culture, aligning with Hindutva ideology, the movement seeking to establish Hinduism as the dominant culture in India. In contrast to Beam's indigenous ethos, we now have Alluri Sitaram Raju, who is embedded with the British Army and aims to dismantle it from the inside. Let's watch this clip. In this violent sequence, we see Raju defending the British cantonment against the mob. The scene complicates the notion of patriotism, showing us that nationalism can manifest in unexpected ways. Raju's actions blur the lines between hero and traitor, highlighting the complex and often contradictory paths taken by those fighting for freedom. Raju is a duplicitous character, and that right off the bat creates doubt in the audience. I mean, can we really trust this guy? His apparent loyalty to the British is just a ruse to infiltrate and dismantle colonial power. This duality captures the conflict faced by many Indians working within the system, balancing survival and a deeper commitment to freedom. The British turned Indians against one another and complicated the nationalist struggle beyond just resistance against the British. Raju's aggressive defense of the cantonment appears as a betrayal, but his true loyalty lies within the freedom movement. His willingness to be misunderstood and vilified by his people for a greater cause represents the sacrifices made by covert revolutionaries across the entire independence movement. So we have two characters with different motivations, but both are seeking the same goal of overthrowing the British. One is an infiltrator who's really seeking to steal their weapons and believes in the ends justify the means, and the other just wants his sister back. It's a lot to think about. And thank goodness for this stunning music, which makes it easier to absorb this intensity. Indian classical music and folk music, it's just so sweet. The music of RRR also incorporates a mix of Indian classical, folk, and Western musical elements, and this fusion is designed to complement the epic and diverse settings of the film. Born in 1961 in Kovar, Andhra Pradesh, Anand Kirwani has composed music for over 150 films in a career spanning 3 decades, but you are only now learning about who he is. He is now gaining global recognition due to this immense success of RRR. Although primarily working in Telugu cinema, he has contributed extensively to Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, and even Bollywood films. His long-standing collaboration with director S.S. Rajamouli, who directed RRR, and also his past 2 Bahubali films, and has brought him to worldwide acclaim. Kirwani is a versatile composer, has worked under various pseudonyms in the late 90s and early 2000s. Hindi film audiences knew him as M.M. Cream as a mysterious name behind many hit songs. Before the concept of pan-Indian films emerged, he navigated very skillfully different industries under different pseudonyms. Kirwani in Telugu, Maragathamani in Tamil and Malayalam, and he created a unique enigma in the pre-internet India, often creating a lot of confusion and amusement. He's a devoted fan of Hindi films, and Kirwani inherited his passion for music from his father, the painter and musician. He began taking violin lessons at the age of 4 and learned the harmonium from his father, establishing a solid classical foundation. And despite his diverse influences, it's the legends of Hindi cinema, including R.D. Burman, who have truly captured his heart. And that's him with S.S. Rajamouli. Now, for the signature banger. All right, clear the aisles already? I was just wild for the whole song. I'm so sorry. Energy, rebellion, freedom, and friendship. These are the driving themes of the epic music of RRR. Now, Naatu was filmed on the lawns of the Mariinsky Palace, the official residence of the President of Ukraine. And lyricist Chandra Bose, the man who penned the Oscar-winning song for RRR, revealed that it took him over 19 months to complete this song. The choreographer, Prem Rakshit, explained that it took more than 20 days to complete the filming. The song is a joyous celebration of Indian nationalism, turning a colonial party into a stage for cultural rebellion. Bhim and Raju are taunted by the British elites who look down on Indian traditions. In response, they break into an electrifying dance, proving that what's local, the meaning of Naatu, is something to be proud of. There is no inferiority here. The stamina to survive the dance is a badge of honor, and their ability to appeal to the white women who are looking onwards is a particular affront to the colonial oppressor. The camaraderie between Bhim and Raju reflects the strength that comes from unity. The synchronized moves represent solidarity, symbolic of Indians coming together to defy colonial rule. As the British struggle to keep up, the power dynamic changes. What begins as a spectacle to entertain the British turns into a statement of Indian culture as being vibrant, powerful, and impossible to suppress. Naatu just isn't a dance. It's a spirited slap in the face to colonial condescension, wrapped in an infectious rhythm and jubilant celebration. The film RRR embodies a turbocharged hypermasculinity that resonates deeply with Hindutva ideology. It presents a kind of masculine heroism we have not seen before in Indian cinema, one that is magnified by sheer production value and spectacle. The cinematic idiom, driven by its grandeur and audacity, surpasses anything even in Hollywood tentpoles. Some people say that RRR is 10 times more entertaining than a Marvel film. While the film has been celebrated for its pleasure, enjoyment, and respect for heightened masculinity, it also seamlessly fits into a commercial tentpole model that has seen immense success here in the US. However, it's precisely this hypermasculinity and its ideological underpinnings that have caused concern amongst leftist critics. For them, RRR serves as a potent symbol of the violence and aggression that Hindu nationalists are now endorsing, making it a poster child for the aggressive political stance of Hindutva. Let's watch this final song in RRR called Sholay. We got an Iron Man in every cone in every lane. Okay, the final song in RRR is a celebration of revolutionary heroes from India's freedom struggle. Yet one of the most striking aspects of the song is the absence of Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and any reference to the principles of nonviolence. It feels obvious that once Iron Man that they are singing about that needs to be in your home is Narendra Modi, or for our American viewers, maybe it's Donald Trump. This song glorifies leaders who represent military resistance and armed struggle against colonial rule, such as Bhagat Singh and Subhash Chandra Bose. You saw, the film goes on, the song goes on with a montage of a number of different leaders. The omission of Gandhi, the face of nonviolent resistance, signals a deliberate shift in focus, aligning more with Hindu nationalist narratives that prioritize valor, masculinity, and direct confrontation. Muslim kings like Hyder Ali or Tipu Sultan, who also stood against the British and were part of key battles against them, are curiously missing. And the presence of Muslim freedom fighters like Saifuddin Kishlu, not here. We do not see the progressive and radical Dalit revolutionaries like B.R. Ambedkar, who stood firmly for the annihilation of caste. We do see the Hindu king Chhatrapati Shivaji in it, who never even fought the British. But he's been co-opted to be a Hindutva favorite. By erasing Gandhi and the ideals of Satyagraha, this film places emphasis on a different kind of heroism, one rooted in action, aggression, and violence. And this erasure reflects a broader trend within the Hindu nationalist movement, which often critiques Gandhi's nonviolence as weak and ineffective, promoting instead an idea of self-defense and assertive strength as the only path to preserving the nation. Being Gujarati myself and having spent years volunteering at the Gandhi ashram, I personally have experienced my own family members who, when I used to volunteer there years ago, they would praise me for going and spending time there, and now they criticize me for wasting my time. Some of them think that Gandhi gave away too much to the British and to the Muslims, who now have their own country, Pakistan. Do I agree with this? Absolutely not. I'm just sharing with you the sentiment that I hear in Gujarat. So Bollywood is a reflection of the times. As the most influential cultural medium in India, it is increasingly aligned with the Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, India's ruling political party, and its version of nationalism, either through direct support from prominent filmmakers and actors or through subtle narrative shifts that align with the party's views. The BJP's emphasis on Hindutva has influenced media to adopt more divisive and sometimes violent representations of religious conflict. This selective promotion helps create a media environment where violent and aggressive nationalism is much more common. Films that promote aggressive, sometimes violent forms of patriotism are often celebrated, while filmmakers that challenge this narrative face pushback. The state's soft power over Bollywood influences what stories get told and how nationalism, often in more aggressive and violent terms, is portrayed. We are so very far from Mother India now. This provocative article, which I showed earlier, that came out in 2022, written by Ritesh Babu, and it inspired me in so many ways to dig deeper. The question that emerges from all of this is, if we are progressing from collectivism in Mother India, non-violence in Lagaan, to brutal violence in RRR, what is next for how Indian independence and nationalism will be presented through Indian cinema going forward? I think it's easy to watch films that portray the colonial struggle from over 125 years ago. The British are always portrayed in these evil ways, and it's become quite vogue to critique the British Empire. What's not so easy is critiquing present-day empire right here close to home. For me, it's nearly impossible to view these films, which are about overcoming colonialism, without thinking about the genocide happening today in Palestine through the American empire. And that is supporting Israel with weaponry. We may need to ask ourselves, is proxy colonialism any different than direct colonialism? In that way, a secondary question also arises from these films. What can these films teach us about colonialism and rebellion? Perhaps Bollywood's trajectory will be linear, progressing towards more violence and division, but perhaps we can be more optimistic for a shift. Perhaps the BJP and those who enact genocide, both in India and here in the United States via Israel, can truly understand what Ta-Nehisi Coates says. He says, your oppression will not save you, that being a victim will not enlighten you, and that it can easily deceive you. While it may be uncomfortable to hear that Gandhi has been erased from the narrative of RRR and being replaced by relatively unknown stories of freedom fighters who were violent, it does help us embrace the complexity and truth of all the stories that were required to achieve independence. It's easy to swallow the narrative that Gandhi was nonviolent and his supreme spiritual power naturally led the British to just walk away. and that he did that alone. Certainly that's what we've been spoon-fed when we watch films like Gandhi by Richard Attenborough and all these other incredible films. But what we need to know about all of that is that we've been spoon-fed this, and maybe to our detriment. Because the violent stories are the ones that enable us to understand how very difficult it is to overcome colonialism, how entrenched it is, and how it may not be serving us anymore, even 150 years after the events portrayed in these films. So, how might future Bollywood films and TV look like in regards to Indian nationalism? We may see more environmental nationalism, films that focus on indigenous communities and ecological struggles. Kantara, which came out in 2022, focuses on tribal struggles to protect and protect nature and spirituality and people. Techno-nationalism. As India becomes a force in technological power, future films will explore the intersection of nationalism and digital sovereignty, celebrating progress while critiquing digital control. The Family Man, which is streaming now on Amazon, highlights national security and cyber threats. Then you have feminist nationalism. Future films may challenge patriarchal structures and depict women as leaders in national movements. Razi, which came out in 2018, and Gunjan Saxena in 2020 showcased women as national roles, challenging male-dominated patriarchy. And even Hiramandi, which is on Netflix now, focuses on courtesan culture, and it highlights the feminist perspective on nationalism, showing how women, often marginalized and overlooked, played a very critical role in the quest for independence. And of course, you have authoritarian nationalism, with films like Article 15, which is on Netflix now, and Jai critique hypernationalism and caste-based oppression. So, no matter what happens, I know this: alongside these multiple narratives of Indian nationalism, there will be increasingly interesting music. And that is where my ears and my heart will be focused while we all decolonize. Thank you so much. Monica Mehta, she was very instrumental in helping with the research. Christopher Chikuri, I don't know if he's here today, but he helped me tremendously. My dad, Rajan Sukhadia, Rina Karya, Preeti from KPFA, and Angela